Yeah, feel free, man. I'm having fun, so.
Yeah, great.
Now you got a butt shot across every camera. That's really the only thing you'll end up using in the end.
Are you still a fan?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I still listen to way more metal than I should. I have all these people around me, like my wife and friends and stuff, who listen to, oh, have you heard this new thing? And I'm like, I don't know. So, you know, sometimes I feel like I'm still that 16-year-old kid who's like, are there blast beats? Is he growling? Okay, I'll give it a chance.
Yeah.
Even though I'm not that way, but in a way I am, you know, like I'm like this, but I'm like this also. Yeah, I don't know. Hey, so I'm Dirk Verbeuren from Soilwork, Bent C, Scarf, and it's good to be back. Yes. I would say drumming for me is kind of being in a different place. Whenever I'm playing, it always feels like, you know, I'm enjoying myself somehow. Even if it's a sound check or even if it's, you know, just sitting by myself at home or recording or whatever I'll be doing, it takes me somewhere. And I think it's just to have this connection with the rhythm and the beat, you know, yeah, it's inside. It's hard to kind of put into words, I guess, but it's really a personal thing and something that I just experience on another level, it seems, as opposed to the rest of life. You know, I have kind of different ideas about speed and stuff. I think with technique you can do anything, and at the same time I know there's something like the nerve twitch speed or whatever that you have naturally, which can influence that as well. But at the same time, I'm always challenged by trying to be better at, you know, what I feel I'm not so good at. So I also would say that my comfort zone probably lies around 230 and below, but you know, I've been pushing very hard to be comfortable at higher speeds. You know, I can play a lot faster, but it doesn't feel comfortable necessarily. So I've been trying to get it to where the technique makes it that I can just sit and play 240 or maybe, you know, 250 at some point. And like, of course I can pull off things, but it's really all about being like natural doing it. I think I do push my comfort zone when it comes to, you know, working with certain people or certain projects. For example, recently I recorded a pop song, which was very interesting because, you know, everybody thinks they can play a pop beat, but no, we can't. That's what I quickly realized, how hard it was to make a straight, simple beat, you know, and which I knew, of course, but recording it in my own studio made it all the more clear that, yeah, it's quite tough and it can take more time than doing like an atheist cover or something. So in that way I tried to kind of challenge myself, and for example, obviously doing an album like Deconstruction with Devin Townsend Project was another one of those things where the level of the music was so, you know, out there and so crazy that definitely forced me to reach a new physical limit to be able to do it. So things like that, you know, where I could have said like, oh, you know, I don't know if I can do this, you know, but of course I had to do it. There have been systems and things that I've learned in school and, you know, from teachers and different, you know, sources, I guess, magazines and things like that, where basically they'll tell you like 1/4 note is this and downbeat is this and the upbeat is this or whatever, and then you kind of interpret it text-wise. So that kind of set that whole system ball in motion for me. But nowadays, I don't know if it's a conscious decision or not, but I try to keep my brains out of the music, because I feel that in the past, whenever I've used my brains too much in the music, it's usually like, yeah, I should have just stuck with the initial, you know, guts feeling. So I think I'm still an intuitive player because I can really sit down and just play. There's never any thought about I'm trying to do this or I'm trying to do that. It just rolls out. Some days, of course, it goes well, other days not so much, whatever. But I always try to keep that feeling alive that I, like you said, used to have when I was a pissed off little teenager. And I would sit down and just go to my drum room and So yeah, I would say that's still there. You know, of course you get there are certain things you have to do a certain way. That's normal. But at the same time, I think it's a danger to get too stuck into theory and exercises and systems and this and that. They're great, and I recommend everybody to work on them. But at the same time, at some point you have to let them go and not think about, am I doing a paradiddle or am I doing triplets and double strokes with blah, blah, blah. You know, it's like, play drums. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? You know, in the end, it's like, it's rock and roll, you know. Who gives a fuck? Like, there are important things in life, and I wouldn't say that rock and roll is one of them. It's really just entertainment and fun in the end, and you know, not something dramatic to have sleepless nights about. So, to me, it's my philosophy. You know. I mean, teaching is interesting because you always learn something from the people you teach as well. So not only are you kind of hopefully passing on some ideas and knowledge and whatever experience, but you also always, you know, whether it reminds you of your younger days or whether you know, learn something new from what your student is doing, it's always very interesting. But I think the biggest thing I've learned though over the years, I would say, is self-confidence. Because I think, you know, being a shy kid, you know, that really influenced how I approached everything and how I experienced everything. And I think it's a big reason why touring used to be something I hated with all my guts. Because I just didn't like playing in front of people, really. You know, it was not what I wanted to do. I wanted to play, but just by myself. I didn't want anybody to be watching, really. So obviously, throughout the years, that kind of had to change, or I wouldn't be here. But so I think that's the biggest thing, you know, it's self-confidence and the fact that you do what you do. It doesn't matter really if you do it one way or another way. It doesn't matter really if one person says this about you and another person says that. All those things really don't, you know, you have to kind of get beyond that. And I kind of managed to do that in a way to the point where if I have not so good show now or not so good performance, I am pretty much most of the time completely okay with that, because I always give 110% when I play. And, you know, some days are better than others, and that's a big thing I've learned. And that's made it a lot more easy for me to play, to be a drummer in general, and to just accept the fact that, you know, hey, I'm human. Like, I know everybody is always thinking about, like, you know, the best drummers and the guy that plays perfectly and stuff, but that's really not the only thing that matters, if it even matters at all, you know. I mean, of course, it's impressive to see somebody play perfectly, and everybody would like to be able to do that, but at the same time, you know, not everybody's like that. And some of my favorite drummers are, by technical standards, horrible. But it doesn't matter, you know, I still love what they do. So they play with their guts, you know, and they create their own feeling and their own sound. And I mean, you take a band like Godflesh, for example, where most of the time there's not even a drummer, and that's one of my favorite bands ever, you know, and it's very guts, instinct music, raw, like coming from the soul. You know, technique is completely irrelevant, and still create some of the best stuff that I can listen to over and over and never get bored of, you know. So that says it all to me, you know. I mean, nowadays there's such a wealth of information out there that makes it probably at the same time easier for students and also more difficult, because one of the hardest things to do is, what are you going to focus on? When you're like a teenager and you have all this stuff that you can be working on as a drummer, what are you going to work on? Like, you know, some kids manage to like do it all, but most kids are like overwhelmed after a while, you know. They're like, should I play like this or that? Like, I talked to one of my students the other day, because I do drum lessons on tour, and that's exactly what he was telling me. He was like, so there's this technique, and then there's the heel toe and the swivel and the blah 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 and the this pedal and that pedal, and I realized he was like, you know, pretty overwhelmed by all the different options and not really focusing on one thing. So it's a trap as much as it's a good thing. But I think eventually you find your way. If your passion for music is strong enough, with time and age, you will get to the place that you want to get to. And in the end, that's, I think, the most important thing, is that you have fun. I mean, in the end, it's really about that, enjoying yourself. Because if you enjoy yourself making your music, people will feel that, and that energy will bounce back to you when you're playing. And that's in the end what makes the biggest difference. It's not how you play or what technique you use or how fast you play or how well or not well you play. It really doesn't really matter. If you express something to people that they feel, it's gonna come back to you, and then that feeds you. And I would say, in that sense, I will agree with the Buck Cherry drummer. That in the end, especially in live performances, the energy flow between the people and the musician can make a big, big difference. Yeah, it's where it started for me. At the time I had no idea, I had no drums, and I was just hitting stuff, and I just was this crazy little rowdy kid, like, just probably angry at the world or something, I don't know. And I had no idea. It's funny because I was talking with Shane the other day, because Shane from Napalm Death, who plays with me in Benzine, and somehow we talked about blast beats, and he was telling me about how when he used to be a drummer, because he started as a drummer, how he would play it with the 2 feet, and how Mick Harris would tell him, no, that's not the way you play it, it's with 1 foot, And I said, that's funny, because I had this very similar experience, because when I heard all that stuff, like on the old Earache Grind Crusher compilation and the old albums, there were no videos. And if there were, the rare video you could see after midnight on MTV when they ended Headbangers Ball with like 2 or 3 death metal videos, you would never see the drummer really, or what he was doing. It would be like a quick flash of like, bleh, and then it's over. So there was no like, drum cams and shit. So I had no idea. I did the same thing than Shane, I was like, I guess it's 2 feet, because with 1 foot at that speed seems kind of like, okay, that's not easy. So yeah, 2 feet. So that's how I always learned it. And then it was way years later when I started finding out, like, all those guys like Sandoval and Mick Harris and, Dave Gray from Repulsion and all the old school guys who kind of invented this beat, or at least brought it to the forefront, they play with 1 foot. So, okay, so that's actually something I've been working on now, is like trying to get my right foot to be to the point where I can do that. But really, I'm not sure where the groove comes from exactly, It's really hard to pinpoint. I know that if I look at it from a technical standpoint, I kind of play them flammy. So, a lot of drummers play them like exact 16th or 30 seconds or whatever. I play them more like, almost like that, where the snare is a little bit closer to the kick than, the other way around. So maybe that has to do with it, but I really don't know. It's really hard to say. It's like I feel them, and when I play them and when they fit with the music, I just feel them a certain way, and that's how they come out. And I guess that's the best I can do. I really don't know. I wish I did. It's a personal thing, I guess. That's the thing. Every musician has their own nature that shines through in the playing, I think. High-speed drumming and having still a good sound without necessarily relying completely on triggers, all it takes is technique. That's what I've found out more and more this year. This whole year we've been touring with Soilwork. I've been practicing 1/2 hour, 45 minutes, 1 hour before every show, like as much time as I can fit in. And pretty much all I've been doing for 95% of that time is just single strokes, both on my feet and my hands, because I've been trying to get my feet to have a better technique, especially my right foot, which is kind of, has a crappy technique, and my left hand, which is my slower hand, and, where I experience an issue with, having a good sound playing really fast. So I think for me, I've been really working on the finger technique and using the rebound. I only hold my sticks really in a certain way. I don't switch them around a lot between French and German grip and classic and whatnot. It's really just pretty much one way. So I've really just been working on trying to use the heads to their full advantage. Yeah, that kind of stuff, where I really use these fingers and grip the stick between my index and thumb lightly and really try and get the most volume and the most speed out of that. And it's practice. It's building muscle for me. It's just getting your body used to it, because I remember a time when playing 200 BPM was very straining for me, but it isn't now. Even if I was to stop drumming for a month, I could probably sit down and kind of warm up for 20 minutes or a half hour, and then I could play 200 BPM without too much of a problem, both on hands and feet. But I clearly remember a time when 10 years ago or 15 years ago when I was younger, when that was very hard to do. So I believe that the same thing works for 240 BPM or even maybe 260. If you develop the technique and you get the muscles to be there and you make the body so that that's what it knows, I mean, it's logical, If you go to the gym on a regular basis and you do certain exercises or you lift certain amounts and you do it long enough on a regular enough basis, eventually your body's going to get used to it. You're going to have muscle memory. Your muscles will be accustomed to that, and you'll pretty much be able to do that in the future as well. Of course, it's harder to do rolls on the toms and get a good volume out of it and a good sound and a good rebound, and it's still something I have work to do on to really make it good, because sometimes in the live setting I get that feeling where it feels tense and the sound isn't really coming out and I'm gripping my sticks too hard. So yeah, it's hard, but it's a lifetime of work to play this kind of music. It's again, it's one of those things, I didn't know any of those Steve Gadd things you named, and I'm still like, I'll never be like a drummer's drummer, I guess, who knows all those, all the classic, a lot of times when people start talking about that in my head, I'm like, oh God, I don't know what that is. Or if I have to sit down and in a drummer's thing and yeah, let's all play blah, blah, blah by Thingy Bob. And I'm like, okay. I don't know a lot of that stuff. I just, I know what I like. And sometimes I think I should listen to more, more of the classic things so that I can at least know what people are talking about. But yeah, whatever. That's me, I guess. Bye, guys. Cheers. Thank you for tuning in and listening so far. And remember, never give up. That's the key.